In Homer's Odyssey, Book 5, Odysseus washes up on the shores of Scheria. He hasn't slept in 20 nights. He needs a safe place to sleep. He comes to a clearing where he sees a growth of olive bushes. He will be protected if he rests beneath its branches. And Homer's description of this perfect shelter has the feel of an allegory, starting at line 524 of the Fagle's translation. He set out for the woods, and not far from the water found a grove with a clearing all around, and crawled beneath 2 bushy olives sprung from the same root, one olive wild, the other well-bred stock. No sodden gusty winds could ever pierce them, nor could the sun's rays invade their depths, nor could a downpour drench them through and through, so dense they grew together, tangling side by side. So drawing our attention to the 2 bushes which are entangled, one of them is wild, the other one is well-bred. The entanglement of these 2 opposite qualities would seem to strengthen the shelter, protecting Odysseus. Now, when I first read these lines, the first thought that came to my mind was The Wayfarer, the painting by Hieronymus Bosch, which represents the Dutch proverb of 1 foot shod, the other bare, the idea of a person being half civilized and half savage. Now, the ideal city-state, if it is like this image of the olive bush, would also make the best use of opposing elements in society that unto themselves would be either too savage or, conversely, too pacified. Now, the Statesman is the name of a dialogue written by Plato in which the kingly art of statesmanship is discussed, and the science of the ideal ruler is to weave opposing natures into the fabric of a state. Now, we might be reminded of the well-bred and wild olive bushes of Homer when Plato says this about animals. If their nature admits of domestication, they are called tame. If it does not, they are called wild. But after he contemplates the tame and the wild, Plato then arrives at the realization that humans cannot be properly classified as either, because some people are as active and bold and courageous as a wild predator, whereas other people are as inactive as livestock. Plato writes, "Our human race shares the same lot and runs in the same heat as the most excellent and at the same time most easygoing race of creatures." So to incorporate these elements into the body politic, Plato uses the image of the weave. He classifies 2 sorts of people. The courageous natures are deficient in justice and caution, but excel in boldness of action. But conversely, the characters of self-restrained officials are exceedingly careful and just and conservative, but they lack keenness and a certain quick and active boldness. Plato says, unless both these qualities are present, it is impossible for a state to be entirely prosperous in public and private matters. Consider the suitors who are feasting on Odysseus' estate. Are they not excessive in boldness and deficient in justice? Are they not impoverishing the house of Odysseus and thereby weakening the Ithacan state? And the more civilized inhabitants of Ithaca, if we recall from Book 2, do nothing about the invasion of the suitors. So we saw clearly that without the leadership of the right statesman, Odysseus, these opposing elements revert to a destructive, parasitic relationship. The state cannot thrive when the extremes of human traits prevail. So if there's an evil in the form of the extreme, then there's a good in the form of the mean. As Plato's stranger poses the question, must we not also assert the real existence of excess beyond the standard of the mean, and of inferiority to the mean, whether in words or deeds, and is not the chief difference between good men and bad found in such excess or deficiency? And all the arts, not just statesmanship, as Plato says, when they preserve the standard of the mean, all their works are good and beautiful. So the temperament of the statesman, like Odysseus then, will be balanced between boldness and self-restraint. So what interests me about the comparison that Plato makes between the bold sort who lack justice and the just sort who lack boldness is that I would think neither person is likely to admit the deficiency that goes with their excessive virtues. In other words, most people think their own bowl of porridge is just right. So when I wonder at this bolder nature, I'm comfortable in saying that the person who is quick to action will believe they have justice on their side. Indeed, they may consider that their boldness is prodded by a powerful sense of justice. And those who Plato would consider overly civilized might not doubt their own boldness, but believe that their courage waits for the right occasion. So we have a problem then of assessment. And surely it is the prerogative of the civic body to discover the statesman if Plato is right about all of this. We have to find the statesman then. And by the way, I hope it goes without saying, we're not obligated to view the world this way and on these terms. But let's keep going, because there's a bigger problem involved in identifying the statesman, because Plato tells us that there is another type of person in society who seems to be like the statesman, but is not. Plato says, another group remains, which is still harder to separate, because it is more closely akin to the kingly class and is also harder to recognize. Plato elaborates, to what science shall we assign the power of persuading a multitude or mob? Rhetoric is the answer given. So rhetoric also seems to have been quickly separated from statesmanship as a different species, subservient to the other. Socrates says this in Gorgias, rhetoric is a semblance of a branch of politics. Politics, in Socrates' opinion, is an art like medicine or weaving, except it's concerned with the science of maintaining the health of the state, whereas rhetoric is a knack of using deceptive speech. The rhetorician pretends to know the substance of an art, including politics. So Socrates goes on to say of rhetoric that it is a pursuit that is not a matter of art, but a natural bent for clever dealing with mankind. And I sum up its substance in the name of flattery. The art of flattery cares nothing for what is the best, but dangles what is most pleasant for the moment as a bait for folly. In the Odyssey, Eurylochus is our rhetorician, our fake statesman, and in Book 12, he convinces the crew to slaughter and eat the cattle of the sun, that deed for which Zeus will kill them all at sea, leaving Odysseus to drift alone to Calypso's island. Eurylochus had first shown himself to be mutinous in Book 10, when he tried to dissuade the Ithacans from forming a rescue party to retrieve the men who'd been transformed into hogs by Circe. And remember the words of Plato, that the rhetoricians are difficult to discern from the statesmen because the group is closely akin to the kingly class. They appear to be like the statesmen. At line 473 of Book 10, this is what Odysseus says by way of narration of these events. Eurylochus tried to hold my shipmates back. His mutinous outburst aimed at one and all. Poor fools, where are we running now? Why are we tempting fate? Why stumble blindly down to Circe's halls? She'll turn us all into pigs, or wolves, or lions, just as the Cyclops trapped our comrades in his lair, with hot-headed Odysseus right beside them all. And Odysseus lashes out at him for saying this. I had half a mind to draw the sharp sword from beside my hip and slice his head off, tumbling down in the dust. Close kin that he was. Close kin is Eurylochus to Odysseus. Now, the line has a literal meaning because the two men are related by marriage. But is there some truth to the interpretation that Eurylochus is the rhetorician who, as Plato had said, is so closely akin to the statesman that he is difficult to discern, and that Odysseus' instinct to kill him right then and there is precisely because of the danger posed by this man who can deceive the men into thinking that he is giving the counsel of the statesman. And the frustrating lesson for all human affairs is that out of all the other crew members, Eurylochus does indeed possess the next closest thing to the real temperament of Odysseus. At line 224 of Book 10, Eurylochus had been entrusted by Odysseus with command of a platoon and sent to scout Circe's island. Eurylochus was the only man who was smart enough not to drink Circe's potion. So even in the virtue of self-restrained command, he is almost like Odysseus. And yet when his judgment supplants the leadership of Odysseus, and Eurylochus gets the men to eat the cattle of the sun against Odysseus's orders, it means the ruin of all. How's that for a political lesson from Homer and Plato? Two natures arise to compete for rule, alike both in appearance and even in the possession of real virtues, and yet the difference in the wisdom of their counsel is the difference between life and death.